Okay guys, I've got the camera where I think you can see. I'm just going to show you. I've been desoldering these pins on this flyback, and I've got most of the solder off of the majority of them, but I've got a few more to do. I've got one up here to do, got a couple right here, one right here, and I've got a couple of points over here to desolder. But what I'm doing is, since there's such a great amount of solder on these, instead of using desoldering braid right at the beginning, I'm actually using this tool. It's like a solder sucker bulb, and this tip, I don't know exactly what it's made out of, but you can get it really close to heat and it doesn't melt like normal plastic. It does melt a little bit if you get it close to your soldering iron. You don't want to hold it there for a long period of time, but it's really good at getting a lot of solder off quickly. So you can like desolder this point by, getting the solder to the melting point, and you got to make sure you have this bulb squeezed in like that, and put it up close to it, and then let go, and it draws the solder up into it. But you don't really want to press it when you're pointing at the solder point, because it could just blow a blast air on there and get it cold for a second, and it won't suck it up good. And these things do stop up some while you're using them. Sometimes you got to clear the hole in the tip of them, and solder will get stuck. But it works best for this kind of stuff. It can get a lot of that solder off really quick, and then I can come back with a desoldering braid and get up any extra that might still be holding on to the pins, and it should make getting this flyback transformer off a lot quicker. So I'm just going to show you how to use it on one of these pins real quick. I might show you two if I can do them, and I hope it works well on this video. I don't know if you can see very well, but I'm going to try it anyway. And go ahead and press it. I've got it pressed. Get it close to the point and get the solder molten. Okay, see, I just had a little bit of a stoppage on it. Let me clear the stoppage. Sometimes it does that, and sometimes it won't do that. But I've had this blow for a long time. Okay, it's pretty easy. I just stick a little tool in the end and clear it, and it's back in business. Get it molten. That's cleared a good bit of that solder off. Try to go to the next point up here. And that's a good bit of that one too. Got this one more point right up here that I repaired. Go ahead and see if I can get most of that. This has a pin that's been bent over because the trace was damaged. There's a good bit here. See how it took almost all that solder at one time? But anyway, that's pretty much how you use the tool, and I know I didn't get all of it. There's a little bit more left right there. This one's got most of it out from under. That pin's just about clear. That pin's pretty much clear. There's a little solder left on that damaged trace. Have to straighten that back out a little bit. But these through here that I did off camera actually worked a little better. I wish I could have got those on camera. But they cleared off almost completely. And like I said, you do get a little stoppage sometimes, but just clear your tool if you have that type of tool. And they do make some of them like that have a tip on there that heats up the solder for you. You don't have to use a soldering iron in conjunction with it. And I haven't used one of those, but I have seen them for sale. But I'll clear another point or two over here off camera, and then I'll start using my braid and clean up any extra that might still be holding on to these pins, and we should be able to pull that flyback transformer right out. Okay guys, I got the old flyback transformer out of the chassis, and you can see there, if I don't have too much shadow, there's some burning on one pin, and that's the pin I had to do the repair on the trace. It had been arcing really bad there, and it's pretty obvious that I think there's a problem with this flyback transformer, even though it is functioning. So it's probably a good idea we're replacing this. There's a lot of burning there on that one pin, and I'm not amazed that it messed up the trace there before, you know, I even got to it, or the previous owner, or excuse me, probably the current owner tried to make a repair there, and it was just arcing really bad there. So it's probably going to continue to fail. But here's the old one. That's what we just desoldered. Those are the pins that were sticking out that we were desoldering and getting the solder out of. And here's the new one. If I back up a little bit, you can compare them. The pin out is identical, the spacing is identical, so looks like it's going to put right back in place where the other one was. But I'm glad I slowed down, and I'm glad I'm kind of picky about checking things, because this is the first Flyback I've replaced, and I told Adidas 1984X that, but you know, we all have to start somewhere, and I need the experience if I ever want to change these out in the future. And he was willing to let me go ahead and do it on this one, and I told him, you know, I would do it, you know, I'd do my best job. But this is the first one I've replaced, and you have to watch your color coding on these wires, and I didn't know this until just now, because I started questioning myself. I was like, now this has got a red coming from the old Flyback, and that's the G2 voltage line, and then it's got a white. Here's the white for the focus, and that goes to your socket on your neck board that fits onto your tube. If you look, let's see if I can hold this up where you can see it. The focus wire, the white one, looks a little thicker than the red one, and that's not so much the gauge of the wire. The gauge of the wire is very similar, but it's maybe a little thicker on the focus wire, but the insulation is much greater on the white than it is on the red, and there's actually like a double layer of insulation. I know you can't see in this video, but there's like an outer white insulation, and then on the inside there's kind of a clear insulation, and so it's double insulated. And if you read the ratings on the wire, see if I can find it on this one. Pretty sure it's the same as the other one. It's rated for 20 kilovolts DC. That's 20,000 DC volts. That's what the focus wire is rated for, and that's why it needs all that insulation. Not necessarily that much voltage is on there, but that's what the wire itself is rated for. And if you look at the rating on the red here, let's see, it's rated for, I know you can't see it, but it says 1,000 volts AC or 1,200 volts DC. That's much lower rating. There's going to be less voltage on the G2 line here, and that's why it has the thinner insulation. It doesn't need the extra. Well, when I first looked at the new transformer, I thought, oh, okay, it's just, you know, follow the colors, because it has one red wire, and I figured that was my G2, and then it has a wire that's not, it's not quite white, it's kind of a grayish, almost a grayish purple. And I thought, oh, well, you know, the red goes to red, and this grayish purplish goes to where the white is, you know. But then I started observing the apparent gauge of the wire, which is actually the difference in insulation, and if I was to reverse these colors, this is identical to the old Flyback transformer, but like here you have your red G2 from the old Flyback, and it's about the same as the grayish purple wire from the new Flyback. And the voltage ratings printed on the insulation is exactly the same on these two. Whereas if you look at the red here on the new one, it's much thicker. You can actually see there the insulation and everything, it's much thicker, and the rating on this red wire from the new Flyback matches the rating on the white focus wire on the old Flyback. So you can't go by the colors on these replacement flyback transformers. I know some guys that have been doing this for years know that right off the bat, but I never knew that. So if I would have hooked this up backwards, there's a chance I could have blown something probably. I read in some forums after I got to looking for this that, you know, sometimes the monitor will survive and you just have to switch them out, but lots of times you'll either blow some type of component or, you know, mess up something on the chassis, and we don't want to do that. You know, we're trying to be as careful as possible. So I feel very safe now after reading through a lot of forum messages where guys had started to do things like this and they had questions. And Ken Layton, who is in the Arcade Controls forums a lot, giving advice on monitors and stuff, I found 2 messages where he was talking to people, and he said the focus line or the focus wire is always the thicker wire that has the most insulation on it. And also the ratings that they mentioned on how much voltage was going to be coming through the G2 as compared to the focus was always much lower. Your G2 is always going to be a lot lower. It's going to be under 1,000 volts most of the time, I think. So these wires being rated for no more than about 1,000 volts makes sense that this would be like the G2 line right here. And since you're way up into the thousands of volts, 12,000 or more most of the time on the focus, this one right here being rated so high would make sense that this is the focus. So I'm glad I slowed down and took a look at this, and kind of cost me an hour or so of research, but you know, I like to do things right the first time, take my time, especially since this is somebody's equipment besides my own. And we'll get this soldered in place now, and I'll probably have to go to bed before I can do anything further with it, but you know, I feel pretty confident that these are just different colored wires from a replacement manufacturer, and the color coding doesn't always tell you the story, so be careful with things like this. Oh, I also wanted to mention, in respect to the different colored wires here, if you look at the bottom of the old flyback transformer, you can see the white wire comes out right here on the upper part, and then down below it the red wire comes out. And you know, in my mind I would think, oh, that doesn't make a difference because once it goes up in here you don't know how it's connected. But since we know that this is the focus wire coming out on the upper part here, and from looking over these wires carefully and looking at the gauges of the insulation and the ratings on the wire, it also helps me confirm this probably is the focus wire on this new flyback, because it's coming out at the same place as the white on the old one, and the red coming out on the lower part being the G2 on this old one matches up with the grayish purple coming out on the lower part of this new flyback, so most likely this is the G2 on the new one. Just wanted to mention that because I think that's another detail that might help people tell the difference in the future if they have a question. That may be irrelevant, but it seems to coincide with what I found out about these 2 flybacks, so I think that's a clue for people if they're in doubt in the future. Okay, we got a little issue here with the new flyback. I think I can work around it, but like I was telling you, the casing's just slightly different. This is something that I didn't notice before. The first issue we had was right here where there's an extra screw that mounts to the metal bracket on the side of the chassis. It's on this side of the old one, and you can see right here it's on the opposite side on the new one, and it's slightly stubbier. This one's kind of stubby, and this one sticks out a good bit more. That's one issue. Okay, there's another issue. It's kind of hard to see unless you just start thinking about it, but this part back here has a much larger reveal. You see my finger going down the side? That part has a reveal sticking out a little bit further. I'd say maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch, and on this one it's flush. As you can see, that right there, it's flush with the front part, or the part right up here, not too far from your screen and focus adjustments. So this is flush across here, And since that's the case, this right here jutting out is bumping, I believe, a ceramic capacitor. Right down there you can actually see where I was trying to put it in, and it was scrubbing a little bit. And I want to try to bend this ceramic capacitor back a little bit, these other two above it. I think I might be able to flex them up a little bit and flex this back just a little, see if I can get just enough clearance. If not, I'm going to have to do something. I don't know whether I'm going to have to desolder it and maybe put some extensions on it, some insulated extensions, and maybe mount it like right up here or something, like just run some extender legs or something over here to kind of get it out of the way. But right now it is definitely bumping that part of the new Flyback. And I want to see if I can figure out what to do about that, and I'll be back in a second. Alrighty guys, got another little issue. The ceramic capacitor was no big deal. I was able to bend it just a little bit and flex it out of the way, and then I continued to try to seat the new Flyback on down, and I run into another small problem. If you see, it might be kind of hard for you to see, but there is a pin right here and one right here, and I think they serve mainly for mounting purposes. They're more like long pins on this new one. On the old one, they're about the same length as the other 10 pins. They're right here and right here. There's two of them, and they're kind of flat. They're stronger looking. They're not rounded or cylindrical. They're kind of flat pins, and these on the old Flyback are a little closer to the group of the 10 main pins around here than the two pins here are to the main 10 pins on it. There's a greater distance here, and it's very slight, but it's enough that when you're trying to seat this all the way down, it's binding, and you can't seat it all the way down easily. And I've put some questions on the Arcade Controls forum in the monitor section, so somebody might give me some advice whether I can just do a little bending to these pins and it'll be okay or not, because, you know, like I said, this is my first Flyback transformer install, and I think if he would have just, instead of getting the MRCFT dash 216 model, if he would have got the dash 252, I believe it is, I believe that would have been pretty much identical to this one. I don't think there would have been much difference at all. But they recommended this one, the seller he got it from, and that's what he bought. And I have seen on arcadecup.com and another site that this one is recommended for at least the NT-2515C. And this one has an M at the end. This model chassis is an NT-2515CM, and I cannot find the difference online of what the difference is in these chassis. Seems like the same chassis from pictures I can find, but I just can't find any data to tell me what the differences are. But if you measure, like I want to measure on these lower pins from the last pin in this series of 10 that kind of go in a circle over to that one support pin, it's just barely over 3/8. It's like probably 7/16. And if you measure the same over here on the old one, you got a little bit less than 3/8. It's probably like 5/16. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 5/16. So it's close to an 1/8 of an inch difference, I guess. Doesn't seem to be a very big difference. And on this upper one, it's about the same difference on it too. It's almost exactly an inch from this center pin right here. That's the best way that I can see to measure, because the other ones are curving around. But from this center pin over to that one support pin, it's almost an inch. It's almost exactly an inch. It's a little less. And if you do the same measurement over here, it's pretty obvious that you've got a difference there. It's like I say, it's almost about 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch, when you try to seat this flush all the way down, that makes a pretty big difference. What I think we're going to end up having to do is bend these pins like 90 degrees, and then, you know, leave 1/8 of an inch and bend it back again 90 degrees in its original position, but leave that little kind of a little right angle there, and then this could probably seat all the way down and you can solder it and it'll be flush. But I mean, I don't know if these pins can take that much of a bend. I don't know if they'll break. I don't think they will, but I don't want to do it if this is going to cause any problems. You know, I don't want to cause any problems. I don't think it would, as long as this is a compatible flyback transformer, and everything I've read pretty much says it'll work, you know. And I'm just going to wait on a couple of the guys that are a little more experienced on the forums to kind of chime in and tell me what they think, you know. I really would like to see if he could get a MRCFT-252 model, because I really think that would work best for this. But we'll wait just a little bit and see what happens. I don't know, I might get a little antsy and go ahead and do this like I'm talking about. You know, I don't want to cause any problems, but, you know, I did notice that the MRCFT-252 that I wish we had here to put back in here, it has a white and red wire just like the original, and I do believe it's color coded the same as this original, whereas like I told you recently, these are color coded different on the wires for the G2 and the Focus, you know. So that makes me believe the MRCFT-252 is probably the correct one for this chassis. You know, it's just my feelings, but let's wait just a little bit and see what happens. I got an hour or two before I really have to get in the bed, so I really wish I could get this done for him, because it's been a few days here. I've been kind of tinkering with the flyback and trying to be careful, and, you know, I know he'd like to get it back, and I'd like to get it back to him in good shape. So let's see what happens. While I'm waiting to see if anybody responds on Arcade Controls Forum to give me some advice on the flyback install, I noticed on this connector right here, the second pin from the left, that's a connector for on his remote board. It has very little solder on it. It has a big open place. I'm looking through a magnifying glass right now. I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a really big open place on there, and it looks like that pin is just barely connected with solder. So I want to flow some fresh solder in there. I might suck off what's there and just make that little tiny repair while I'm waiting, you know. Anything to improve the condition. The rest of it looks pretty good. I've looked over most of the other solder joints, and it looks pretty good otherwise. But I'll do that while I'm waiting. Alright, went ahead and made that repair. Still don't know if you guys can tell really looking through the magnifying glass, but it's the second pin from the left on that large group of solder joints that you see there. It's from a connector on the other side there. But second pin, not this first one, but the next one over, I resoldered it and flowed it in there pretty good. And I think it'll be a lot better, because I mean it didn't even have half the amount of solder it should have had in that joint, and the pin was just barely connected to it. And I don't know exactly what that goes to. It's a brown wire, I believe. I'd have to look it up and see if I could find some schematics or something on it to find out what it's for actually. But probably hooks up to one of the pots and controls something for either horizontal or vertical, or maybe even brightness or contrast or something. But definitely not good to have it with just that small amount of solder. So anyway, we got that straightened out. Should be good to go now. Okay, we're 24 hours ahead of the last part of the video. I didn't get many responses in the forums, but a fellow that goes by Grant Spain said that he'd probably, if he was installing, he would go ahead and bend the pins and just go ahead and install them. And or go ahead and install the new Flyback, which I believe that's what I'm going to do. Went ahead and verified. I got on the Neotec website and contacted their customer support through email, and they wrote me back today, and a fella who's on their support team said that this new Flyback here, the model 216 MRC FT-216, he said that would work fine with this chassis. He said this is just an older chassis, and I guess that Flyback there is being used on most of their newer chassis that they have in the 2500 series, I guess. But those two pins, they don't line up from the factory perfectly, so I don't know if some of their specs are off or what, but that is the one that's recommended on Arcade Cup and some other sites, so I'm pretty sure if he's using that on this chassis or on the one without the letter M at the end, the 2515C instead of the 2515CM like this one, I'm pretty sure that's probably going to have the same problem as I'm running into here. So he's got to be doing something like this to install it, I would think. If not, I don't know how he's installing it, because those two don't line up, and it's going to leave it sticking up above the circuit board if you try to cram them down in there, and you can't get it to seat all the way down. So I think this is the best solution. I've already went ahead. If you can see that leg right there on the bottom, let me go ahead and get a little pointer here. Right here, this leg has been bent right there, and it's just 90 degrees one way and then 90 degrees back out, the length of the pin here. And I did the same thing on the top pin. It's probably a little harder to see there, but right here I bent that 90 degrees and then come back out as straight as I could possibly, and I've got it as flush as possible to the Flyback transformer. There's a little bit of that gunk right there, that sealant stuff that they use inside this right there, and I couldn't scrape it all off, so it's sitting a little higher than I would like. This one didn't have any right there, so but either way, you can kind of see now they are a little less than 1/8 of an inch closer on the pattern of 10 pins there, and if you measure with the tape measure, it comes up to the same distance as the two pins on this old Flyback transformer are from the series of 10. So we're going to try this and try to seat it down in here, and I'll be back in a second. I'll tell you if it fit like a glove or if I had any problems, and then I'm going to get the solder in it. Alright, the installation after I've bent those two pins went really smoothly. Seated right in without too much hassle at all. Have all the pins through. Got the bent pins that I had to modify slightly right here, this long one, and this long one right here, and then the series of 10 pins in the circular pattern right there. Every one of those have come through. It's about as far as they can come through, and I got to get the soldering now. It looks like it's seated down pretty good from the top. See if I can get a little bit of light over here. Looks like it's seated down pretty well to me. It's pretty flush all the way around. I've done checked, and looks pretty good. Looks like it's made to fit in there like a glove. Looks like its focus and screen controls are accessible. They do look just slightly lower. If you look, we're level with it right now. They look like they're slightly lower in this opening. I think they were up just a little higher, but either way they're accessible pretty easily. And we're going to get soldering now, and I'll come back and show you the results.